doing a TTRPG talk with John Wick. John, you are the John Wick I first knew and appreciated. John Wick, formerly of AEG, involved in such games, responsible for such games as Legend of the Five Rings role-playing games, 7C, amongst House of the Blooded, and amongst a whole other whack of them. John, I'm curious, how did you get into TTRPGs to begin with as a player?
Well, the first game I bought was Call of Cthulhu. And although it's kind of weird, I was talking to a friend of mine that I knew many years ago in Iowa, because that's where I first got into games, was in Iowa, and he was like, "Do you remember playing D&D in the recess yard when we were in 5th grade?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness, yes I do." And what we were doing was, it was a bunch of kids. None of us had any of the books or anything. We had just heard about this thing called Dungeons and Dragons. And so we were like narrating fight scenes. And there was a dungeon master, and everybody got one turn. And it was kind of like a LARP where everybody got to take one step and then do something. And so it was like these really super complicated action scenes that we were playing out. And there was a DM who would say, that hit doesn't work, that hit works, that hit doesn't work, whatever. I was like, oh my god, I do remember that. So, but I didn't get the box or anything like that. To me, that was Dungeons and Dragons. So when I got Call of Cthulhu, I was completely unprepared. I had no idea what I was going to do. And then later on, when I ran into the tabletop Dungeons and Dragons, I was like, whoa, this is weird. This is not what I remember. But it's so weird how you talk to friends from a long time ago and you're like, oh yeah, I do remember that. But yeah, Call of Cthulhu was my first game.
Very cool. And that's probably, I'd say, not abnormal, but it seems like a lot of the industry's very first game is always some form of D&D or another. Like, yeah. I know even for me in the 90s, it was a box version, like a Dragon Quest or whatever, because, I ran into it on accident because my mom got it for me for like Christmas or something, because it was off the shelf, right? No idea what it was, but yeah. And we
had to figure it out. And back then the rules were, well, let's just say they weren't the most clearly expressed. So we had to figure them out on our own. And there was no internet. There was no, nothing. There was nothing. It was just us, and you get together with other people. And the most amazing thing to me about role-playing games, and it's diminished as the years have gone by, was I could be running a D&D game, and then I move, move it from state to state, and run into people who are playing D&D, and they're playing it completely differently. Right? One, whoa, what is going on here? It doesn't even resemble the same game. But we have the same rule set, but because the rules were so vague, we had to interpret them. And so everyone is running everything their own way. And I think it's something I try to encourage in players with my games, is to, just play it the way you want. It's fine. I'm not going to show up on your door with the canon police and punish you for not playing the game right? I
like that idea, the canon police. That's great.
Can
give you a badge for that?
Yeah. yeah, you get a badge for that. Yeah, but you don't get a gun. That's the problem. It's kind of hard to enforce.
That's fair.
But
like the Pinkertons that way, then.
Yeah, well, we'll send the Pinkertons after you. But yeah, it was kind of like, watching. I've been around long enough now that you see trends, you see cycles, you see trends in games, and even in the industry, and so yeah, it, like right now the whole D&D thing that's going on it's another thing, it's another cycle, it's back in the the previous D&D controversy that's going to kill the game. And, in the previous D&D controversy, that's going to kill the game, and all that. It's, D&D is going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Where did you go from Cthulhu forward as far as like playing? What did you expand into from there?
I had when you buy the Call of Cthulhu box set, it comes with a little catalog. It's like, did you like this product? Well, buy other products. And so I looked at it, and there's this game called Pendragon, and I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. And there's a game called Stormbringer. And I was like, wait, is that Elric's Sword Stormbringer? It is Elric's Sword Stormbringer. Oh my god! So I would save up my allowance, and I would order, and so my first role playing games were Call of Cthulhu, Stormbringer, and Pendragon. And I ran those because I'm the forever DM, right? I'm the forever game master. And until I moved to Georgia, and they were all playing D&D, and that was the first time I encountered D&D for reals, right? But until then, I was raised on those games, and it really shaped the way that I looked at role playing games and ran them, and eventually designed them.
Indeed. And speaking of design, was AEG where you first broke into design, or did you do anything before Legend of the Five Rings?
I mean, I did amateur stuff, but, nothing real serious, nothing really thoughtful. And it wasn't until I went to AEG, I got hired as a staff writer for Shadis magazine. And I was writing under various pseudonyms for Shadis. And then at the same time, they were working on the Legend of the Five Rings collectible card game. And as it turns out, I have a small bit of experience in samurai history and samurai culture, and I was like, hey, I know about this stuff. And so I got hired to write the flavor text and develop characters and make characters out of all of the cards. And well, that was easy because making characters, that's what you do as a game master. You just make NPCs all day long. And then it was really funny because when I met Peter Atkinson when he was still working at WotC, or still owning WotC, as a matter of fact, I got introduced to him as the guy who writes flavor text. And he said, "Oh, up at our company, that's a punishment." And because I'm me, I said, "Yeah, I can tell." And, and I was like, "Why would you put something on your card why would you punish somebody and say, write something for this card? You're just asking for trouble." You get someone who's enthusiastic.
That's true. That was mid 90s, right? Like 90, maybe 94, 95?
95.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And how did that transition into becoming like the author of the Legend of the Five Rings first edition book?
Well, we had a big, everybody submitted proposals for the RPG, and mine got picked, and and then we developed it. I worked really hard with DJ Trindle and Dave Williams on the system. I knew the approach I wanted with the game, and it was really funny because when we were developing the game, John Zinzer, the owner of AEG, was like, "Okay, I want to read this," and I was like, "It's not done yet." And he's like, "I want to read it," and I said, "Okay, but the GM section isn't written yet." And so I gave it to him, and so he brought it back the next day, and he was like, "I don't know how to run this game," and I went, "That's because the GM section isn't written yet." And he said, "All right, well, you're running this game on Friday, right? We're going to make characters, and you're going to run this game so I can see how this game plays." So we did that. We played the game. And after the game, John Zinder gave me one of the nicest compliments that anyone has ever given me. He said, "All right, how do we put you in the book?" And I was like, "Well, I haven't written the GM section yet." Right. That's where I'm going to be. I'm going to be in the GM section. Very and I take a lot of pride in that. People tell me that that's, one of their favorite GM chapters in, it's how do you run this game? And I wrote it first person, very, very personal, I am talking to you, and this is how you do this. And I think I may have been one of the first people to actually write that way, because so many games before that, you read them, it's like, putting together a bicycle from Sears.
Tutorial, totally.
I wanted to write a very personal, very, very, hey, I am going to show you how to do this. And it became, it's one of the things I complimented on the most. So.
Yeah, that's where I think I first read your voice and where I realized, like, because before that, I mean, I didn't really pay attention to who designed a book. I just didn't. It was pretty early on in pretty early on in my gaming hobby. But it was like, before that, it was like an instruction manual, basically. That's how I treated those. So I never looked at the author of an instruction manual. Until I got deeper into things, I never really looked at who designed a game, except for, I think, when you wrote things, that personal touch you gave and the GM advice on top of it was captivating. It made someone want to read more, I think.
And I was standing on the shoulders of giants. Sandy Peterson's Call of Cthulhu, role-playing game teaches you how to scare people. And it's like, one of the things it says is like, scaring people is more important than the rules. And that was the first RPG I ever read. So, and the first RPG you read, like, really sets the tone for how you react to everything else. So there was that. There was Sandy Peterson. There was Greg Stafford's Pendragon, which is genius, and then Ken St. Andre's Stormbringer, which is fantastic. And then I had read Jonathan Tweet and Robin Law's Over the Edge role-playing game, and that game did something really, really important for me, because at the time, when I'd get a role-playing game, I would use about maybe 20% of the rules, because I was much more interested in getting to the action and, okay, what do you want to do? Okay, roll this. Okay, go, type of thing. Just moving very, very fast and creating a pace and then slowing the pace down with, and all that kind of stuff. And I felt like, well, this is an interesting way to run a game, but I'm weird. Everybody else ran the games. All right, roll for initiative. Okay, roll to hit, roll to dodge, roll to soak. Okay, roll to, dice rolling competition. And then I read Over the Edge, and I realized, oh wait, I am not alone in the world. and what's more is that in the Game Master section of Over the Edge, Jonathan Tweet says, that game system that I showed the players in the player section? Yeah, it's a lie. This is a real game system that's going on that I have in my head. And I was like, right. Oh, wow, that's really cool. And so when it came time to write, mine, I wanted to have not only that kind of insider feel to it, but, have that personal dialogue with the reader. And I think a lot of that also comes from reading a lot of Harlan Ellison's essays, but that's probably me.
Very cool. What? I know you had the roll and keep mechanics, and there were similar-ish, same base sort of mechanic underneath Legend of the Five Rings and 7th. I always said one of the most undersold aspects of that game, as far as scaring players, and you mentioned it, is the open-ended damage, because it's one of the only games I've ever played where it's like the chance of this guy hitting you is almost zero, but never zero.
Yeah.
Like, the chance of this guy one-shotting you is never zero.
It's never zero. Well, and that came about because the original rules for L5R were, if you get hit by a katana, you die. Because we were trying to emulate Toshiro Mifune movies and Akira Kurosawa movies, and the whole that whole genre of movies. And in that movie, when you get hit with a katana, you die. There's no wounds. No, you get hit by a katana, you die. And John Zinser objected to that, and he's like, no, you got to have hit points. And so we put enough hit points in the game where if you get hit with a katana, you die. But you still have hit points. And one of the things about L5R was, whenever I'd run it, I'd have to warn players. It'd be like, if you get hit, you better really be smart about which fights you get into. You better be really smart about which fights you get into, because if you don't, you're all going to get killed. And the first time that people play L5R, they have two reactions. One is, this game sucks because I just got killed. And the other one is, oh my God, if I hit somebody, they die. So that was kind of, the reaction to that game.
Yeah, for sure. From there into 7th, was that your next endeavor? Yep. And that was still at AEG.
Yep. And 7th was the swashbuckling adventure, what would Errol Flynn do, role-playing game. And that used the opposite rule, where it was almost impossible for your character to die. because it's swashbuckling. It's your character doesn't die unless it's dramatically appropriate. And so why don't the rules reflect that? And that was, again, one of the things I picked up from, mostly Pendragon, but Call of Cthulhu and Stormbringer, is the rules should emulate the literature that you're reading. And so, if somebody, even in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, almost no one dies. No, they do, but they die at the dramatically appropriate moment, right?
Absolutely. And I think your drama dice system emulated that. I was a young gamer then, right? I was in my late teens. And one of the things that sort of blew my mind with that is, for years I'd played with people, and what they would do is the most sort of, like, when it got to combat time or it got to anything tense, they'd use the things on their sheet that were most likely to succeed, and they would do it again and again and again. They would fight the same way because doing this one move was 95% likely to succeed, and this one was only 70. So they'd keep doing that. With drama dice, it was the first mechanic I had encountered in my early gaming, where it actually encouraged the player to play into the trope and rewarded them through the mechanics. So slide down that banister, get a drama dice, even though that might not be as easy as running down the stairs, right? You swing across the chandelier, you kick the villain in the face, you kiss the person of your choice as you grab the map to the treasure island and leap out of the window, crash through the glass window, and land in the hay bale below that takes you away to the dock so you can get on your ship. And why can't that be one roll? It's like, no, you have to roll for initiative, and now you have to do this, and now you have to, like, no, you make it one thing. It's one thing. I get it. So
I was just talking last night with a new game I'm designing, and a couple of people that are giving me feedback and helping me out and doing things. There's a question about what is realistic in this. Should a person be able to pull a weapon out and shoot it, or throw it, or whatever, and then be able to do something with their other hand? But this isn't really realistic. And I said, okay, well, there's a scale here, and on one side of the scale is fun, and on the other side of the scale is realistic. Which side of the scale do you want to be on? Because I can guarantee you do not want to be on the realistic side of the scale, because then you're going to be playing Phoenix Command. And I don't know if you remember Phoenix Command, but it was a game that came out in the 90s where you could take damage to your spleen. It was incredibly realistic. It was a modern game. You followed the trajectory of a bullet as it went through your body. And each part of your body had certain points, and that's how far the bullet went. And it took forever to play that game.
Right.
And it's like, which side do you want to be on? Do you want to be closer to fun, or do you want to be closer to realistic? And I think these days, that the trend is to be closer to fun than realistic. Although there are plenty of people out there who their fun is realistic, and I can't tell them they're wrong, because you get to choose your favorite flavor of ice cream, and nobody gets to tell you otherwise.
I've seen some minor trends back towards, like, what I'd call, or what is being called sim light, like what would I say, like Broken. I forget the name. Me, Myself, and Die's new game that's coming out there. Broken Kingdoms or something like that. I've seen some trends towards sim light, but nothing back towards that simulationist, like, full scale the other side. I think I think people are realizing that's a no-go. So
well, I mean, at what point are you playing a board game? Right? This is an old trope of mine, which is, I can make chess into a role-playing game. All I have to do is give my pieces motivations and names. And, my bishop wants to capture your rook. Why? Because your rook is sleeping with my bishop's wife. Okay, well, he's going to pay for it. Or she, as the case may be. They're going to pay for it, right? And if I'm playing this game, and we're playing chess, and you have no idea what I'm doing, and I go, yes! When I do a certain thing, you're like, what? that was not a tactical move. That was not a smart move, John. I'm like, but my bishop caught your rook. Yes. We are not playing the same game, right? And at the same time, can you take a game like I don't know, let's not mention any games by name, but a game whose initials are D&D. If I play, can I play that game strictly as a board game? Just strictly. What is the difference between a typical fantasy hack and slash role-playing game and a game like the board game Descent? What's the difference? If there is no difference, then are you playing a board game? You're just giving your pieces names and motivations. As opposed to a role-playing game, which rewards you mechanically for giving your pieces names and motivations. There has to be some kind of mechanic that engages you in a way that you will make suboptimal decisions. And that was like one of my first definitions of a role-playing game, is a game that rewards you for making suboptimal decisions.
I felt like 5e was so close to doing that with
it was, and then everyone just ignored it.
To the point
and the
where
new D&D, they took it out, right?
Yeah. Did they take advantage out too?
No, they took it out. They took out, and now I may be wrong about this. I have not read the new player's handbook, so people will correct me for saying this. But it's my understanding that like all of the background like motivations, like your all of those things are gone because no one used them.
That's too bad. Well, yeah, I think that was the hidden gem of 5th edition. Yeah.
What was that?
I thought that was the hidden gem of 5th edition, was the backgrounds and then advantage too. Like that's what,
and inspiration.
That's what I meant. Inspiration, not advantage.
Yeah,
sorry.
I thought inspiration was fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I modified it in that players can bank it. So in regular D&D, either you have inspiration or you don't. And I was like, no, you have multiple inspiration, and you can use all of it if you want. If you have 4 points of motivation or inspiration, and you want to use all of it to make sure that you do the thing, roll 5 d20s and take the highest roll. I mean, what's wrong with that? That seems like, I mean, that's the way I run it. So,
for sure. Okay, so after AEG, was it? Did you release anything before Wicked Dead Brewing Company?
Yeah, I did Orkworld.
Oh, that was okay. Orkworld wasn't part of.
No, Orkworld is just me on my own. Yeah, Orkworld is the game where you play the orcs and the monsters, or the humans, dwarves, and elves are coming to kill you and take your stuff. And it actually came about because John Zenzer, who keeps popping up in this, told the office, he says, I'm gonna run D&D. And I gave him the standard answer that I give everybody when they offer me to run D&D or play D&D. And I was like, great, I'm going to play an orc bard. And he's like, there's no such thing as orc bards. And I said, give me a weekend. So I went home and I wrote up a whole culture, like an 8,000 word article essentially for Shadis magazine about orcs. And there it is, Orkworld. And that turned, and essentially what I did is I took all of the negative stereotypes about orcs and I made them cultural values. So the reason orcs are cannibalistic is because they believe that if you eat your best friend Bill, if you eat him, you will carry him with you. Because we want Bill to be with us. So when Bill dies, we cut him up and we eat Bill, and now Bill is with us. And the reason that they have sex with everything is because they haven't figured out that that the male participatory action in sex makes babies. They think that women just make babies because women are magical, and maybe they are because it's a fantasy world. So who knows? And so what does that do for the culture? And then and other things too. And so just taking all of the negative stereotypes about orcs and making them positive cultural values. And that was the point of Orkworld.
Yeah, we had one run of that with my friends, and we really enjoyed it. We went through kind of one of those, I forget what the ceremony is called in the game, but it's like their adulting ceremony.
The childhood ceremony when you become an adult?
Yeah, we had like someone in the tribe trying to run a coup at the same time we were doing that, so they caved us in, and then we had to like get out and try and save all the stuff. It was super fun. Yeah, it was a good time.
That's really cool. Yeah, you go and scare the kids, and you tear them away. The tribe shaman and the other males come in, and they grab the kid and pull them away from the mother because the mother can't protect you anymore. And they take you off, and we're monsters, and they wear masks like humans and elves and things, and throw them in the cave, and then okay, you got to get home. You got to come back home now, and you got to get back by yourself. That whole ceremony, fun is really fun to play as an opening game. It's like the starting game of Orkworld, because it makes all the players. Doing that kind of thing, doing a thing where all the player characters, the first thing that they do, they're in peril or they're in danger, and they've got to work together to fix or to solve the problem, to overcome the objective. Right, is always a great way to start a game, because it means the players can know each other's characters, can create friendships and friendly rivalries and all that kind of stuff. It's just a great way to start the game.
Very cool. From there, you went into Wicked Dead Brewing Company next?
With Jared Sorensen, who is the mad genius of game design.
Yeah, the 3 rules, right? That's what I remember.
Jared's three game design rules, which is, what is your game about? How does your game do that? And then what behaviors does your game reward? And if you can't answer those questions, you don't have a game.
I still throw that, like if someone says they're designing a game and I know them, I still throw those to them. And oftentimes I'll see them go, oh no, like, right? Because, but I think that's healthy, because it stops that forever design that a lot of people get stuck in. And I don't blame people. I've tried my hand at like an idea, and I get to a certain part and it just gets daunting, and like you get overwhelmed and you maybe pull back from bothering to go further. But I think the more you scope set like that is really a 3 scope statements. If you were to do it in like project management, you're defining, you're framing the game before you even start. And then, very cool.
And there have been games where both Jared and I, me more than Jared, where I was like, I have this new game and I'm really excited about it. And he goes, what's it about? I'm like, oh, damn. You got to figure that out first, because otherwise you're like, what are you doing? And people ask me like, well, how does that work? And I use L5R as an example. Like, what is your game about? Okay, the L5R is not about being samurai. That's what you do in the game. That's like the plot. But that's not the theme, right? The theme of Legend of the Five Rings is honor. It's like, what is honor about? And so what we did is in the role-playing game, took the classic clans, and I gave each of them a Bushido virtue, and said, this clan is about this. The Scorpion clan is about loyalty, and the Crab clan is about courage, and the Lion clan is about duty, and all that kind of stuff. And so the clans are, when you get 2 Scorpion and a Lion and a Dragon together, they can argue about what Bushido is, what is Bushido and what's most important, and they're all right, they're all correct, and they're all wrong. And so you get those conversations, which is what I really wanted in the game. Is I wanted people to argue about honor on their way, from this adventure to that adventure. They can talk about it, and you get that kind of Aaron Sorkin walk and talk between the plot points of characters, arguing about honor, and then something happens, and one of them can turn to the rest of them and go, you see, I was right. And, and all that kind of stuff. So what's L5R about? It's about honor. Okay. How does it do that? Well, it's got an honor mechanic. When you act like your clan expects you to act, you get honor. And when you act not the way your clan expects you to act, you lose honor. And honor makes things easier for you to do. And then what behaviors does your game reward? Well, that just kind of covers it. It's when you act the way that your clan expects, the game rewards you, and when you act against the way that the clan expects, the game punishes you. And there you go. That's what it's about, right? And but then you get And even D&D, here's the three questions applied to D&D. What's the game about? It's about murdering people who don't look like you, so you can go through their pockets for spare change. Right? That's what it's about. It's about fighting. D&D is about fighting. And all of its mechanics, how does it do that? All of its mechanics point to resolving problems with fighting. And then what behaviors does the game reward? Well, when you defeat things through fighting, you get experience points, which means you go up in level, and now you can fight bigger things, and there you go. I mean, very linear, very straightforward game. But when you try to do anything else with it, just like any other game, right? Any other really well-designed game, if you try to do something with it that it isn't designed to do, it fails. And so when people wanted to say, well, I want to play, merchant class characters in L5R, I'm like, it's not designed to do that. And, because it's designed to play samurai who are duty bound to do what their clan tells them to do. And you're a merchant. Your motivation is money. There is no money mechanic in L5R that rewards your character for earning money. So any game that's really well designed, if you try to do something with it it's not designed to do, that's on you, not on the game.
Very true. I remember some of your Wicked Dead games, like you had 30 came out during that.
Yeah.
Cats, maybe?
Yep, Cat, about playing house cats. You protect your owners from monsters that they can't see. Yeah.
And then any other, anything, Wilderness of Mirrors?
I did Wilderness of Mirrors, which was like a super Jared game. It took that, three things, the three things, and kind of made mechanics out of them. Because it was the Mission Impossible game. The old Mission Impossible TV show. Where what I would do, and it was also how I do adventures. This is how I do adventures for any role-playing game. It doesn't matter what it is. This is how I do adventures for any role-playing game. I will tell the players, for like Wilderness of Mirrors, the president's daughter has been kidnapped. And that's the premise. Okay, now, all of you are experts in the field. I want all of you to tell me one at a time one thing when you go to research okay, we're going to check satellite photographs. We're going to go to the traffic cameras. We're going to find out the license plate of the van that drove away. We're going to all this kind of stuff, right? So I just give the players, I tell each of them to tell me one thing that they learn when they do research and they find out what's going on. And so the players will all go around and they'll say, well, the license plate number is this. I track the license plate number and it goes back to this. And that tells me that the cell of this terrorist organization did it. I'm like, great. That's now a fact in the adventure. And somebody else says, there were four men. There were four men who took her. They were carrying these kind of weapons. They were carrying this kind of thing. And we traced the weapons to this place and we found an address that we have to go and investigate. Great. Okay, so now we have this. And so each player goes around and adds something to the adventure. And I'm paying attention as they do this. And then it goes all the way around the table and it comes back to me. And now I get to say something that's true about the mission. And usually the thing that I get to say is very bad. Because my job is to make the player's job harder, right? And then I ask them, do you want to go around again? And they're like, yeah, we want to add more details. And it comes back to me, and it's my turn again. And I get to add something bad. And I go, do you want to go around again? And now they're like, maybe not. Let's jump on the mission. So what we have is the first half of a Mission Impossible episode is the planning the mission. And then the second half of the episode is watching the mission go wrong. So, and watching the people improvise around it. And so what happens is I have all these details about what's going on. And because the thing has come back to me twice, that means I get 2 complication points. And that means at some point I can, let's say the players have actually drawn a map. I've had players do this, of a sewer system that's going to lead into this warehouse where the president's daughter is being held. And so, okay, great. You're going down the warehouse. You're going down the sewer, and you come to this grate, or you come to this tunnel right here, and there's a grate there. Because for two things, I can create a complication that sets their plan back, and now they have to improvise around that. And the whole game is also designed on each player being like, one of them is the muscle, one of them is the assassin, one of them is the planner, one of them is the driver, and each one of those has that skill. And that is the only skill they have. And if they roll that skill, they get to say what happens next. But if they don't, I get to say what happens next. The GM gets to say what happens next. Which doesn't mean that they fail. I can say they succeed, but I get to say how they succeed, which means I can make their job harder on them. While their successes are all trying to make their jobs easier on themselves. And that's now I just use that format for any adventure I do in any game.
I was about to say, I never played Wilderness. I played a lot of those other Wicked Dead games, and I floated it past my gaming group at the time. They weren't on board, so we didn't bother. But now you explaining it, I'm like, this really was the prototype for the House of the Blooded sort of system or format,
yep.
Like the Things True style, the whole gamut there.
And I got it from Jared. Jared was, as far as I know, Jared was the first guy who created a game where the rule was, if the player rolls high, the player can say how they succeeded or failed. And if the player rolls low, then the GM decides how the character succeeds or fails. And it has nothing to do with competence at all. And in his game Octane, which is the post-apocalyptic game where everything blows up and the only thing that's left is everything that's cool. So instead of everything sucking, it's like everything that's left is cool, like smart cars and Cappadocian monkeys who know Kung Fu and Samuel L. Jackson, and everything that's cool, right? And in that game, you had tropes on your character and had nothing to do with their skills. It's like, if your character does this more often than this, then you will get narrative rights more often if you do this. And so, that was where I got that for House of the Blooded, because I wanted to do, for Houses, I wanted to do the anti-D&D game, which was not so much like I hate D&D, but it had all of the tropes that were different from D&D, in the same way that Michael Moorcock made Elric the exact opposite of Conan. And if you read, Conan stories, Conan is a barbarian who, there it is, Conan who's a barbarian who's illiterate, and Elric is the emperor of the most powerful nation in the world. Conan hates sorcerers. Elric is a sorcerer. Conan is strong. Elric is an albino who needs drugs to live. Moorcock just took the negative, like a Polaroid negative of Conan, and made a character out of him. And I wanted to do the same thing with D&D. In D&D, you're a wandering nomad sellsword, and in House of the Blooded, you're a noble who has land and people and power. And in D&D, you go and fight the evil sorcerer. In House of the Blooded, you are the evil sorcerer. And in D&D, you never do social actions, because the game doesn't handle that. And I wanted a game where, like in D&D, resolving a 10-second fight takes 4 hours of real time. But seducing the barmaid is a D20 roll. It's clearly a game written by virgins with sword fetishes, right? So in House of the Blooded, I wanted to reverse that completely, where a sword fight is one roll. You roll, I win, you die. But all of the social stuff is where all the meat of the game is. And so that's what I wanted for House of the Blooded. You're a noble who's got incredible power, you've got sorcery, you got people, and the only thing left to do is screw with your neighbor. And so it's a game about petty politics and power and all that kind of stuff. So, and in that game, I was like, how do I get people, because Elric is a tragic character, and I was like, how do I get people to play Elric? How do I get people to play Macbeth? How do I get people to play Hamlet? And I was like, oh, wait. If I let them say how their character fails and then reward them for it, they'll do it, because I saw it work. And so in Houses, when you describe how your character is the author of their own destruction, which is what tragedy is, the game rewards you. And if you use the narration rights to make yourself stronger, the game punishes you. What are you doing? Don't do that.
That game gave me, as a GM, it gave me the first sort of permission, I'd say. Permission's probably a good word for it, because sometimes you're waiting for something to give you permission, or a lot of gamers, I think if I could give advice now, is don't wait for permission, just it's your game, do it.
Yeah.
But back then, I was waiting for permission. It was the first time it was like, give permission to frame what game we're going to play, not just like what system or whatever. This is a game, we're going to play this, and we're all going to die at the end. Well, if players know that going in, there's no bait and switch, and you can maybe sell everybody on it, and then everyone's on board for this tragic end that it's going to be the game, and they're all playing into it the whole way, rather than sort of being like, oh, I thought we were doing this, and then they're like, dragging their feet. Yeah, the other thing I will say about that is the land management from that game is still my go-to if I need to like hack in a quick land management system to a game. Just the basics of I thought the trouble mechanic was nice and straightforward and easy, and just the simple, is this hills or is this forest or is this industry? I thought it was a nice clean system for that.
Yeah, and when I do version 2, it's going to be even cleaner. What I learned from Houses was that nobody wants to do homework.
Yep. It's true.
And so when I do Houses 2, all of the domain actions are going to be in-game. They're going to be things that you do during the game. And as a matter of fact, if you do look at Banners, which is one of my newest games, that is kind of like a template for how the Houses version 2 is going to be, where the houses are all represented by 5 virtues of what a house, or 5 strengths, 5 pillars of what a house is, like politics and faith and military and money and all that. And then each of those give you actions that you can use during the game, like in-game play. And so you still have that tiny little bit of management at the end of the game, where you can go, hey, I did this, just like XP. It's just your house is, your banner in Banners is just like XP, just like your character sheet. And if you use a thing, there's a chance it goes up, and type thing. So in that way, it's not the vast accounting that Houses could turn into.
I love how you were able to, I liked Blood and Honor. It was a brilliant game. I only got to play it once, but it was super fun. And that was based off House of the Blooded, but it was a way of also bringing in all these legacy fans of yours who've just been itching for, something fresh in the Legend of the Five Rings sort of genre, I guess. And it was kind of a house, or kind of a L5R too. It just using a very different system. Mm-hmm. That uses the House of Blooded system, which is you roll high, you get to say, you roll low, the GM gets to say, and things like that. It did have if you get hit with a katana, you die. It does have that rule. And then it also had a system for making your own clan. And you chose the daimyo of your clan. There's 6 choices. One of them is ambitious, one of them is cruel, one of them is off his rock. You pick which daimyo you want. And then to create that sense of your character is the will of the clan, the based on the choices that you make when you make the clan, tells you what your skills are on your character sheet. You will take these skills because this is what we want a samurai to be. And then if you go with that, then the clan rewards you. And if you're like, I want to be kind of a black sheep, then the clan goes, and it doesn't reward you. And so your life is harder because the characters who are going along with the clan, they have a couple extra points that you don't, right? They have a couple benefits that you don't. And life for you is harder. And I really like that. And some people are like, well, that's not balanced. I'm like, balance is 100% in the game master's hands. 100% is not in the game system at all. So yeah, I'm more in line with that. Especially the older I get as a gamer, the more I feel that way too. I throw 100 of anything at you, it's gonna be
rocks fall, you all die. Make new characters. Valid GM move, right? You'll never play with that guy again, but it's a valid GM move.
Yeah, that's fair.
Here comes an ancient black dragon. Oh wait, there's 20 of them. GMs, and to be a little bit more realistic about it, a game master makes every choice that every NPC makes. When I can't tell you the number of times I've run D&D and somebody is like down to like 2 hit points and they're fighting a really bad guy, and the bad guy stops and goes, you should stop fighting. And D&D players, like people who are used to traditional, they like, what? Like, and he says, you should stop fighting. I don't want to kill you. Just surrender. And they're like, no, I'm going to fight to the death. And goes, don't make me kill you. I am not a murderer. Just sit down, and we'll deal with this in the other way. And what is going on? Because in most hack and slash role-playing games, it's fight till you die. And as soon as the bad guy shows any kind, he's like, hey, stop doing that, type thing. It throws the players off. They have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
Right?
They're like, wait, I thought you were just going to keep fighting until I kill you. Yeah.
No, I could kill you right now.
Yeah.
I'm not a murderer. Who do you think I am?
Right.
Right. and that's one of the things that I've always said about role-playing games that I like the most. The thing that as a GM that I like the most is putting the players in situations where their character sheets can't help them. It really comes down to who is your character. David Mamet said that all of drama breaks down into one simple formula. There's the protagonist, and there's a goal, and there's an a obstacle in the way of the protagonist. And character happens when the protagonist chooses how to overcome that obstacle. And that's when you show the audience who that character is. It's super simple, right? And when you watch a David Mamet film, and by the way, David Mamet has gone off the rocker. I mean, but way back in the 80s, he was awesome. But the whole idea of all I have to do is put a moral dilemma between you and your objective, and then sit back as the GM, cross my arms, and wait for you to make a decision. And you will get players who are like, well, I have to win, so I will do whatever I want. But then you get the players who are like that guy, who are like, you know what, I'm not a killer. We have to find another way around this. And it's one of the reasons that I always loved the thief as a character archetype. Because the thief is not a killer. The thief will go, I will find a way to do this without killing people. I will find a way of doing this without any physical conflict at all. I will ghost this level, and you will never even know that I was here. And so the thief, in a lot of ways, has a built-in morality, has a built-in ethic. There's a code to the, thieves have a code of honor, and it's built into them in the same way that a paladin has a code of honor that's built into them. Which is also why, when you play paladins right, they're fun to play, as opposed to just making them bullies. But
when you play thieves right as well.
What's that?
When you play thieves right as well, I've played with too many the chaotic stupid thieves. This is what my character would do: thieves that backstab everybody. But
this is what my character would do.
Yeah, I accept your premise.
Call that the Nuremberg defense. This is what my character would do. Like, we'll make another. You know what? No, you decide what your character does. Yeah. You're in charge. Is your character in charge, or are you in charge?
Yeah.
Because what you're really saying is, I want to do this.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, that's fine. If you want to be upfront with it, what was your alignment? And they're like, no, my alignment is, no. What was your alignment? Because it's evil now. It's I use alignment like a weapon.
I think that's how it should be used, honestly.
It was the original intent. It was the original intent to prevent characters from being murder hobos and going around and just murdering anything they want. Mm-hmm. It's like, do you want to be evil? Fine. Did you ever play the old D6 Star Wars game?
Yes. Yep.
Do you remember Dark Side Points?
Yeah.
Dark Side Points were well, first of all, that is like one of the most brilliant games ever designed. Just genius. And the whole idea of you get force points when you do the right thing. And then you get more force points if you do the right thing at the right time. Right? And then you get more force points if you do the right thing at the right time and you put yourself in personal danger. And like, great. And then when you use the Force to be selfish or hurt people or cruel or anything like that, you get a dark side point. And whenever and dark side points spend the same way, and whenever you spend them, you get another one immediately. Oh, this is faster and easier. But if you get too many dark side points, your character becomes an NPC. Yeah. And I always treated D&D, whenever I run D&D, I tell everybody the same way. If your character ever becomes evil, I get them. They are mine. And you will not get them back. And, and that's how my D&D, I think my D&D games tend to be a little bit different. Because I do get the guy who's like, well, my character would do this. I'm like, well, then your character's an NPC, and I'm in charge of him now. Because, let's face it, alignment is the rule that isn't a rule. There's no other rule that interacts with alignment. Right? It's just kind of sitting there, and it's like, well, what is evil, and what is good? And like, no, we all know what evil is. We all know what good is. It's simple. Don't be a philosophy bro. Don't be a Discord philosophy bro who's going, well, what really is evil? Like, fuck you. You know what evil is. Oh, can I swear on your podcast?
Yes, every vampire player everywhere. So, the moral.
Well, here, let's talk about the 3 rules. Let's talk about Jared's three rules, design rules with Vampire. Okay, what is your game about? If you read the tin on Vampire, it's about you were a hunter-gatherer. You were human. You're a hunter-gatherer. And now you're a predator in a world of predators. And you have to share space and resources with these other predators. You are in the culture of Hannibal Lecters. How do you do that? Right? And can you maintain any of that humanity that you had before? Because if you don't, then your character goes crazy or whatever and becomes evil and blah, 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 right? That's what the game is about. That sounds fantastic. I love that game. How does that game do it? It gives you superpowers.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
But the humanity nobody plays with humanity, pal. Nobody plays with humanity. It's just like nobody plays with alignment.
Right. Yeah, it's true. They find their way out of humanity as much as they can and out of any sort of situation. Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to be Sabat, so I don't have to deal with it.
Right.
Aha! Yeah. And then, okay, so what is the game about? It's about trying to hold on to your humanity in a world of being a monster. How does it do that? It gives you superpowers. And finally, how does the game reward you? It rewards you for eating your friends so you can have their superpowers.
Yeah.
That's how it rewards you. There's a mechanical reward for diablerizing other vampires and stealing their powers. So Jared and I would call this a schizophrenic game. It says it does one thing, and then it really rewards you for doing others. And so when you get people who like go to like a vampire game, or a vampire LARP is the best example. People go and I have this character who wants to be, who I'm trying to maintain my humanity, and I'm trying to do this, and I'm trying to do that, and I have this, rich backstory, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna, face this. I'm gonna hold on to my humanity no matter what. Let's play the game. What do you mean I'm dead? And they don't spend 10 minutes in the game before some black sheet bully who has all of the dots on their character sheet filled out comes and kills them because it's fun. And the game rewards them for it. Right? So it's like, so the way I run Vampire, as you know, is a little different than the way that many people run Vampire. I care about humanity.
I think if you miss that part of it, you're missing like one of the key tropes in almost every vampire story told, unless you're playing like a horror game, which doesn't leave room for vampires as player characters. Like if you're playing, an old 80s blood and gore film, or what was the Tarantino one with vampires?
Oh, From Dusk Till Dawn?
Yeah, if you're playing vampires in that, I mean, those aren't playable characters in any game. That makes no sense at all. So,
Jared likes to say if you took the vampire character sheet and you ripped off the top 2/3, that's the only thing you need to play the game. You have humanity, willpower, and blood. Do you need anything else? Not really. I mean, I like to monster garage games. It's like, okay, let's take a look at the character sheet. do I need this? Do I need this? Do I need no. Okay, this because this is what the game is about. Okay, this no. Okay, this is good. And you just boil it, and it comes back down to me running, without me knowing it, running like 20% of the rules. Because those are really the only rules that players were engaging with anyway. So why use the falling rules? Who cares? You know. I got confronted by a friend of mine. I was designing the Houses of the Blooded LARP. And these two friends of mine, Trey and Tom, they run amazing LARPs at Gen Con. They ran the Game of Thrones LARPs. They ran they're going to run a Dune LARP this year. They're really good. If you get a chance to play in their games, they're fantastic. And I was showing them the House of the Blooded system. And Tom looked at me and he says, "Why are you trying to remake the Mind's Eye Theater system?" And I was like, "Oh, ow, that hurt. But it's true." Right? And then he goes, this is just wrecked me. He was like, "So, John, what do you really need to play a LARP? What do you really need?" And we thought about it, and it came down to, I was like, what is the world's oldest, most successful, currently running LARP? And I asked this to all the people that play LARPs. And they say things like, "Oh, it's this Boffer LARP that's been running since 1980. I'm like, "No, it's Model United Nations. Model United Nations is the oldest LARP. And in it, the only rules are Robert's Rules of Order. That's it. It's who has the talking stick. Who gets to say something on the floor of the United Nations. And everything else is, there's no falling damage. There's no attack to hit. There's no soaking. There's not, you don't need any of that. You don't need any of that. Okay, so what else do you need to run a LARP? What do you really need? And then when you think about it, like, what do you really need to play a role-playing game? Because if you really break it down, a role-playing game is you and your friends sitting around a fire, around a campfire, and somebody has, the talking stick. Here's my iPhone. Yeah, here's the talking stick. And as long as I have the talking stick, I get to say what happens next in the story. And a player, and I'm the GM, so I get to say what happens next in the story. And the GM is that person. And then a player says, "I want to say what happens next." And the GM says, "Roll dice." And based on that roll, that player gets the talking stick, and it says how much they can say with it. And then the talking stick goes back to the GM. And you just continue on. That is everything you need to run a role-playing game. You don't need anything else. You might not even need dice. You just give each player 3 tokens, and whenever they take the walking stick, they spend a token. So you better be careful about when you say something happens. Because it may come to your character, about to face the boogeyman, and you're out of tokens. And the GM says what happens next. But what else do you really need?
That's a good point. If you break it down to bare bones, then it prioritizes helps you identify what's most important. So,
yep.
I am conscious of your time. I don't want to keep you here all day, but I appreciate these talks. I think I'd be remiss to not just ask what would you say the key mechanic out of second edition 7th was? Was it the move then? What was it? Roll then act or roll then move or
yeah, it was roll and move. I was in a conversation with the brilliant game designer James Ernest, and we were at a design seminar, and he said as a joke, because half of everything that James says is a joke for himself. It's a private joke between him and him, which is there's 2 kinds of games. There's roll and move games and move and roll games. And he said, Warhammer is a roll. And it's a move and roll game. You move your little dudes, and then you roll to see if your plan works. And then a game like Clue is a roll and move game where you roll the dice, and you go, okay, I can move 5 spaces. Where do I want to go? So the die roll becomes a resource. And when he said that, I was like, I can't think, and I may be wrong, but I can't think of a role-playing game that's roll and move. All role-playing games that I'm familiar with, even the ones I've designed, are you say to the GM, "I want to do this," so you move, and then you roll dice and you see if your move worked. So what if we did a roll and move game where you roll dice and use them as resources for your character's actions in the next round? And that's what we did with 7th Sea 2nd Edition. Now, I'm incredibly proud of the mechanic that we did. And it was so different, nobody got it. It's so different. Like, people did not know how to take it. They contacted me and said, John, the new 7th Sea doesn't work at all. It doesn't work at all. And I said, well, how you work playing it? And they would describe how they were playing it, and they were playing it like 1st Edition, which is a which is a move and roll game. And I went, that's not how the game works. Did you read the rules? And they were like, yeah, we read over the rules. I went, no, you didn't. You kind of skimmed it. And you assumed it worked like 1st Edition, and it doesn't, right? But yeah, that I'm very proud of that mechanic, and I think that we just did something so completely different that a lot of people did, like, even to this day, teaching people how to do that mechanic. You watch them, like you watch them looking at the dice and looking at you, and you see their brains kind of like, this is really weird. This isn't like anything I've done before. I don't know if I like it, and so yeah, well, there's that.
I do, yeah. I noticed that with any game that does something that takes away sort of one of the core principles. If they've been role playing for a long time, they're just like, what is this? If it's so different from what they're used to, they kind of
yeah. The narrative control, passing the talking stick to the players, right? I watch people go through the grief process. At first, it's denial. That doesn't. No, this can't work. This mechanic can't work. And then they go through. Anger. And they're like, no, what are you doing? This is my game. Stop doing this. I am angry. Grrr. And then there is a moment when you do you could do this mechanic with D&D. You could do it with Dungeon Crawl Classics. You could do it with Shadow Dark. You could do it with any of the crawly games, right? If the player rolls high, the player says what happens next. And if the player rolls low, the GM says what happens next. You can play it with any of those games. And it really cuts down on combat really fast, right? But what happens is when they see it, there's a moment where it clicks, where they go, oh, wait a minute. I can say that my character failed. And I get to say how they fail. Oh, wow. And then you remind them, like in Ghostbusters, if you watch the original Ghostbusters, they fail every roll. You think about it. They fail every roll. You watch Indiana Jones. You watch the first Raiders. You watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indy fails almost every roll. He fails to switch the idol out. He fails to set. He fails to bluff his way out of having the idol, and he has to give it to Belloc. He fails all the time, but he fails forward, and he moves the plot forward, even though he fails. And once players figure out they can do that, man, they don't want to go back. They don't want to go back to the GM gets to say what I do. And
sure.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think my observation with a lot of players are they don't even realize fail forward's a thing. They're so used to it being a black and white yes or no answer, where if they roll low, they're just automatically punished, and it's like putting up a door from allowing them to advance forward. So it's just really. It just really makes them feel like they're not playing any sort of hero, right? But like the difference to me is we're not playing a superhero in this genre. We're playing a hero. We're going to stumble a lot with this character, and we're going to get through it sort of just barely. And I think that can be some of the most rewarding pieces.
The best example I have of this is I was running 7th Sea at Gen Con with a group that was a group. Like, they all arrived together, and they wanted to play 7th Sea with me, right? And I was like, yes, let's go play. Let's go to, the gaming thing. We'll play the game. And one of the players, he said, John, I want to be in love with the villain. And his wife was like, oh, rolling her eyes, right? and they're all like, he does this every time he wants to be in love with the villain, and you're like, you give players what they want, right? You give them what they want, but not in the way they expect it, right? And I said, great, because John can there's a mechanic for redeeming villains, for turning them into heroes. Can we use that mechanic in this game? I'm like, sure, it's only one session, we'll use a fast-paced version of it, and we'll play the game. So the game ends with them confronting the villain, and he's, and she's beautiful and evil, and he's, trying to convince her that she doesn't have to be. And they are dueling on the parapet of a castle above a waterfall, because it's 7th Sea. I mean, what else are you going to do, right? And he's like dueling with her, and he gets up on his chair in the middle of open gaming, and he gives this monologue that is just awesome. It is so awesome. Players at other tables applaud him when he's finished, right? It's just epic. And he's like, hey! And I go, great, here is your opportunity to to roll, and she sees, she falls in love with you, and she becomes a hero. And he goes, no, I fail. And like the table and the other people who were playing were stunned. Like, what do you mean you fail? What, you fail? He says, I fail. And she shoves her sword through my stomach and kicks me off her blade, and I fall into the waterfall. Brokenhearted. And I was like, dude, you get all the drama points. Here they are. Here's all the drama points. Because in 7th Sea, if nobody sees you die, you don't die.
I love when characters do that, and I'll share one quick story, because this is our mutual friend Mark. In my Pendragon campaign, we're using Larkin's like winter phase rolls, and there was some stuff in Mark's early character where we determined that his father was not his father, and then through other rolls we ended up determining, finally it came out, he is a bastard child of Vortimer.
Oh, goodness.
The former king. And so he goes and he gets papers that prove this is basically a friend of his dad's, but while he's near his deathbed, kind of gives legitimacy to him, shows him that he is this person. Mark's character goes to visit his mother, who's like away at a nunnery at that point, talks to her about it, confirms the legitimacy, confirms why, and confirms that he wasn't actually... He was Vortimer's son, and his dad had hid him, pretending that he was his own, as sort of a way of protecting the line forward, protecting him from getting murdered as a kid, that sort of thing. When he read that, he took the notes, and he saw anarchy, saw how messy this was. He was one of the people that was around for baby Arthur, so he knows Arthur's coming. He's heard the prophecies, he believes in them, and he took the papers and he put them in the fire. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm not going to try and become the king. I'm not going to try and get in the way of this. And I just thought that was brilliant, because that's throwing away a lot of power as a player to not be a king, right? So I thought,
it's making the suboptimal decision. If it was a board game, you would file the papers, become king, and win.
Right?
Yeah. But no, it's like, what is the decision that is going to have the most emotional impact on the viewer, on the reader, or the whatever? Because a role-playing game is the only literary medium. Robin Laws says this. It's the only literary medium where the author and the audience are the same person. And I tell Robin, no, you're wrong. That's fan fiction. But the other players are your audience, right? And that's essentially what Robin's saying. But and if you can make a decision that makes the other players drop their jaws and go, oh, and you have that moment of sublime, what James Joyce called that sublime moment, where you go and tell this story to someone else, and it may have an impact on them, but if you weren't there to see it, it's not the same thing. It's like telling somebody else about a concert you went to. Yeah, you can tell them about the concert, but they weren't there. They weren't there with the cheering that because a concert is this thing where you're in this room or this building with 300 to 3,000 or whatever of people who are all in love with the same thing that you are, right? When you go to a Rush concert, They've been retired for 10 years now, and you get 6,000 Rush fans in the same building. There's a lot of enthusiasm, and they're all there to see the same thing. But it's the same thing in a role playing game. You get this tiny little audience, and you can be the best storyteller in the world, and your war stories about what happens at your table will never resonate the same way that they do at that moment at that table. And that's why role playing is so cool.
Absolutely. I wanted to check in with you. Are you good for another 10, 15, or do you need to wrap it here? Okay. I wanted to dive into, speaking of, the segue with Pendragon. One of my favorite things about Pendragon is its traits, and the whole idea of being this lord that's bound is kind of like always been in my mind since Legend of the Five Rings. It's a very different style of play to actually be beholden to someone and to be in a feudal structure. What inspired you towards Banners?
So Banners is it's kind of my Pendragon hack. It's kind of like the way I've been running Pendragon forever. Little tiny things that I do differently. And although if you play Pendragon and look at it, it makes perfect sense. Everything that's part of it. And the idea was to do a role playing game where you're part of a banner, which is there are no kingdoms or duchies or earldoms or baronies. They're just banners, and then the crowns who rule them. So it's Banners and Crowns, which is the original name of the game, and I just cut it down to Banners. But and so when you play Banners, the first thing you do is you make your banner, and you make choices about what your banner is like and the character of your banner, and is your banner honorable? Are they sneaky? Are they treacherous? Are they whatever, and all that kind of stuff. And then you make characters for that banner. And again, like in Blood and Honor, if you make somebody who fits the mold of that banner, then there's a certain style of play. There's certain rewards you get for it. But if you play against type, there are still rewards for it, but they're different. They're different kind of rewards, and you're playing against the stereotype of what your banner expects of you. And it also takes a lot of the homework element of Houses of the Blooded and Pendragon, where you have all the land management stuff, and makes them in-game actions. And it also allows you to make the map. The players make the map. So they decide, like the World of Banners is going to be very different than yours, because there's no official map. There are canonical banners in the back, the great banners, but you don't have to use them. They're just there for an example. And the whole game works on that beautiful Pendragon system of you're rolling a d20 and you're trying to roll under your trait. And then, which is super simple. It's one roll. Did you do it or not? And then it also has the personality traits, which to me, when we're talking about going through the character sheet and circling the thing, like, this is it. Whenever I show anybody the personality traits in Pendragon, I just like, this is it. This is what the game is about.
I find they don't get it at a view, but they get it during play, and when it lights up for them, and they realize not only can they use it as a frame of reference, but there are times where you as a player feel stuck, and it's fascinating to just let it go that way. Like, we'll use it sometimes as we'll roll against those traits. Players will optionally choose to roll against their traits to see how they would
see what their character does next, right?
Yeah.
The example I like to give is from Pendragon, which is the way the personality traits work, for people who don't know, is that there's two columns of traits, and the traits oppose each other. So you have chaste and lustful, and forgiving and vengeful, and generous and selfish, and all these. And the traits, each of them add up to 20. So if you have a 7 chaste, you have a 13 lustful, and if you have a 4 forgiving, you have a 16 vengeful. And when a situation arises when when your character would do something according to one of those traits, you can look at it and go, no, my character is vengeful. That guy is dead, right? And the example I give is, especially if you have a trait of 16 or higher, it means the GM can make you roll it. You get a benefit for it. You get glory. You get the cool commerce of the game, which is glory, which is what you want. Because if you are Sir Delwyn the Lustful, who is my go-to Pendragon character, if I'm playing Sir Delwyn the Lustful, I have as high a lustful as I can, and I just shove that chaste right down, and I'm happy. I'm cool. I get to do this. And then Morgan Le Fay shows up and says, "Oh, young handsome Delwyn, betray Arthur and sleep with me and be one of my knights." And I'm like, "No, I am sworn to Arthur." And the GM says, "Roll your lustful." And then your character does what your character does. And it's so much fun. So cool.
It's very, very cool. I wanted to make a note on banners. I'm running a very long Great Pendragon campaign across 3 different games that are all in the same world. And for the different eras of the Pendragon campaign, I'm looking for different mechanics to make it feel slightly different in different eras. And I think your gratitude mechanic is going to work wonderfully. I'm going to implement that in Romance Period. I think it's a great idea. This idea that people become beholden to you for deeds you do for them, and it sort of rewards the players for going on these quests for knights with ladies more than just glory. Now they have some kind of positive relationship with this person. So
and you can cash in your gratitude, and how you cash in your gratitude is really important.
Yep,
because it can affect the reputation or affect your relationship with that NPC. It's like, and I had a player do this, which I was so proud of them. They did a thing, and they were doing they were at a tournament, and the tournament was to win this big thing. And the lady who was running the tournament had a favorite knight in the tournament, and they heard about it through rumors and gossip. And the guy who made it all the way to the end and was facing that knight, he let the knight beat him. And after the tournament, he's in his tent, and the lady's handmaiden showed up and gave him a coin and says, "My lady owes you a gratitude." And the next time, because he's so cool, and the next, like a year later, they're at another party and whatever, and they're sitting together at a table, and it's her and him and the knight who beat him on the other side, and he has that coin, and the other knight is being churlish toward him. It's like, ha ha ha, you weren't strong enough to win and everything, and he gave the coin to the lady, and he says, "I would like to return my gratitude." And she said, "What would you like?" And he said, "Please pass the salt." And it was like, and he was like, "I just want to show that guy up. I just want to make that guy that's her favorite knight look like a fool." I was like, "Yay!"
That's great. Have you had the opportunity to play through like the Book of Feasts with the card deck?
Yes. Yeah.
I love that card deck. I find it's super fun. It adds so many curveballs. It is
super fun, and it's sitting below the salt and sitting above the salt, and like where you're sitting in the room is really important because it's who you get to interact with and all that. And I took a lot of that and I brought it over to Banners, but really simplified it, and because that's what I do. But I super simplified it, and so it's still part of the game. And you can still roll for random events happening and things like that. But David Larkins did that, and it's fantastic. Just a fantastic idea.
All right, I think I'll go ahead and move towards just a closing here because I'm already at hour and 18 minutes for you. What are you working on these days, John? Is there anything you want to shout out or share?
I am working on a game called Voyager, which is a sword and sorcery. It's not fantasy. It's a sword and sorcery game using the Traveller open game license. And what that means is it's a 2d6 game. You're rolling 2d6 and trying to hit a target number. But more importantly, you go through the whole career path. And I've taken the idea of the career path, I've modified it a little bit, I've tweaked it here and there. So it's a little bit more fantastical. It's a little bit more towards the kind of caste system that a fantasy world would have, or sword and sorcery world would have. But essentially, if you know how to play Traveler, you know how to play this. And the fun that everyone has told me is that the most fun is actually making characters, and that really makes me happy, because that was the fun I had in Traveler, was making characters and pushing your luck and pushing your luck and pushing your luck. And for anyone who knows, yes, there is a way for your character to die during character creation. It's hard to get to, but if you roll badly enough times, you have to roll 3 2s in a row on 2d6 to get it. But if you do, your character dies during character creation. Because that's just, I have no idea why I like that so much. It's just, I have no idea. I just love it. But I love the idea that at the end of the game, or at the end of character creation, you have this super detailed, rich character with a past. I was a pirate, and I was, I started off as a farm kid. And I went into the military, but then I got conscripted. I got knocked over the head, and I woke up on a pirate ship. And I was on a pirate ship for 4 years, and then I came back, and I did this other thing, and I wound up being a mercenary for this mercenary group. And your character has this whole colorful past that's evident right on your character sheet. You can look at it right on your character sheet, and that was like the most fun of the game, was putting together the character creation so people could have that.
Very cool. Now, canon police aside, where did you land on the spectrum of lore for your world, like mythology, I guess, for the world? So
Avira is the name of the world, and what I did was, at the very beginning of the book, there's like a 2-page introduction to the world. And that's all you need to know. It's a sword and sorcery world. It's like Conan. It's like Thundar the Barbarian. It's a sword and sorcery world, right? And then you start making characters. And then when the world starts kicking in is when a player decides to be a priest or a priestess. Because that's when you start learning about the mythology of the world. Because that's where the gods are. You pray to a god. If you're a priest or a priestess, you pray to the god, and the god gives you blessings and things. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to balance, I want to play a fighter. That's what I want to play. Conan. I don't care about the gods. I don't pray to Crom, and I'm here to steal things and make love to beautiful people and eat, drink, and be merry. And then there's the other player who, wants to deep dive into the lore. And that player, that is there for them. But you don't need it to play the game. But if you know it makes the game richer for the player who likes it, who likes that. So all of the deep dive lore stuff, which I love writing anyway, is right there for everybody to find. They can look through it, and all of the L5R fans, all of the World of Darkness fans, all the Glorantha fans, all the Pendragon fans, everybody who's really into lore, it's there, and you can find it, but you don't need to know it to play the game.
Right. Yeah, I've gone through different stages in my own experiences with being like completely smitten by lore in a game to we don't need it, we can come up with our own lore. And I think I've started to move back towards a middle ground where I find if you have the right amount of lore, it provides a framework. When I'm going dungeon delving and I know enough about the world, I'm excited for what mysteries I might uncover. Where if I don't know anything about the world, I don't have as much of a framework. So that's very cool.
Players don't fall in love with game systems; they fall in love with worlds. And that's evident, like, in Start Playing Games. I'm running games on Start Playing Games. You can pay me to run games for you. It's been really fun. Start Playing Games is really fun. It's running games for people. It's really cool. But the most played game on start playing games is Dungeons and Dragons and its cousins, and the most played setting on start playing games is Ravenloft, which stunned me. I thought it's not Dragonlance, it's not Forgotten Realms, it's Ravenloft, because people love sexy Strahd, and there's nothing wrong with liking sexy Strahd. You get to like your favorite flavor of ice cream, right? But that really says something about, like, I had an anecdote about being at the last day of the L5R collectible card game at the Day of Thunder, and like one of the other nicest things anyone ever said to me was by Dr. Zen Fawkes, who has the greatest villain name of all time, Dr. Zen Fawkes, and he was a big L5R fan, and I still keep in touch with him, and when that Day of Thunder, when the game was coming to an end, and there were 300 people around the AEG booth crying because of the end of the story, and I'm standing next to Zen, and I'm trying not to break up, and Zen goes, you did a hell of a thing here, John. And of course I'm going to say it was, there's the art director, there's Dave Williams, who, did the mechanics. There, there's this. And Zed said, John, no one is crying because the archery mechanic is cool. And I was like, oh man, that's so sweet of you to say that. But he's right. Nobody falls in love with a game system. They fall in love with the world. And, I think that's evident all throughout the game system, all throughout the game industry.
Very true. And I 100% agree. I did want to bring us to a close. Is there any shout outs you have? I will put the link for the Start Playing, as well as any other links. I think you have a couple of games you mentioned. I'll put those links up for where they can be found on probably Drive-Thru.
Yep, Drive-Thru. I have Banners, which is my Pendragon hack, which is a blank world. You don't have to play in the world of King Arthur, and it's got gods and blessings and banners and big high. You're playing at the high end of the game. You're playing really high end game stuff. I also have Wicked Dungeons, which is my take on dungeon crawling, where instead of being mercenaries or going in to get treasure and stuff, you are essentially firefighters who are going in to destroy the dungeon because it's corrupting the local fauna and flora and the village and stuff. So you have to get into the dungeon, you have to destroy the heart of the dungeon, and then you have to get out of the dungeon before it collapses because they're all from alternate dimensions and things like that. So it's dungeon crawling as firefighting, which I'm really fond of. Voyager is currently being playtested on my Patreon, which is just $5 a month. Not only do you get to see all of my designs, you get to be part of the playtest and give design feedback. And I run at least one game a week for all of my patrons, anybody who wants to play. And I run it on Wednesday nights and Friday nights. And then very, very soon, I'm going to be coming out with a new book, which is called Letters to a Young Game Master. And it is a book that you buy for a young or young at heart GM who is completely intimidated but wants to do the thing. They want to be the GM. You give them this book, and I will be their damn cheerleader all the way through it. I will encourage them. I will tell them tricks. I will tell them ways to be the most awesome GM they can be. And I will lure them away from all the pitfalls of bad GMing tactics and things. That is coming out very, 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 very soon. I'm waiting for the physical copy to come back from Drive-Thru before I announce it. But that'll be coming out really soon too.
Very cool. And that does remind me of one key one I missed, which was play dirty. I think your GM advice there was, what was the word? Explosive. I think it was a fun take on a lot of what you implement there. And I know enough about your design and your GMing to know that there's, a lot of the advice is there in a way that is going to shock people that are new to your style of GMing, or let's say they've come from like a long line of, say, like running D&D, it might blow their mind to think outside of these frameworks they got from Dungeons and Dragons, having never touched another system that does it another way. But for most of us that have touched on narrative games, we've spread around. It's a good collection of ideas about how to manage a table in a way that produces sort of the most fun and like the best entertainment for
my friend, the legend Jesse Foster, was reading it when it was coming out in Pyramid Magazine, and he tells everybody, he says, because he gives people copies of the book, and he goes, "You will hate this. You will go, he is wrong. He is wrong about everything in this book." And then you're running the game, and you're like, "I'm going to try that thing that John talked about," and it works like a charm. And I'm like, that's the best compliment I can get.
All right. Well, thanks, John, for all the work you've put in over the years, and appreciate you taking the time for this.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Bob.
Yeah. Take care.